mis jarruita börsi.
Ave, Satanas! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm a member of an amazing independent congregation called Satanic Delco, and we welcome members from anywhere in the world. If you want to learn a little more, visit satanicdelco.com. Today I'm going to discuss the results of a recent poll where Satanists were asked if the world is getting better or worse. Before we get to that, let's say hello to a whole slew of cool new Satanists that have joined up with us recently on Patreon. We've got Joshua, Delaney, Baliv, Wizard in Black, Zeta, Manny, Matthew, Brianna, Isaac, Lauren, Sean, Christian, another Sean, Jenna, Jonathan, Lindsay, Joe, another Christian, Rory, Tommy, and James. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate the support, and I'm glad you guys are still down during times when the podcast output slows down a bit. So really, thank you very much. If you have a moment, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. You'll find links to join me on social media, a form to send me an email, and a link to join up with us all on Patreon. We have a few different tiers to choose from with various benefits, including the amazing Greetings from Hell Satanic Postcard of the Month Club. That is the most direct way you can support me and this show. If you'd like to do that, visit hailsatanpodcast.com. All right. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I like to challenge other Satanists from time to time. I challenge you to dig a little deeper, think about a thing in new ways, and generally open your mind to new perspectives and possibilities. Of course, not everyone is going to like that. Some people find being challenged uncomfortable. The insecure folks will often react defensively. So be it. This episode is an example of where I have to challenge perceptions a bit and say, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. So let's start at the beginning. Recently, I posted a poll in Satanic Delco's Facebook group, and I also posted it publicly on the Hail Satan Instagram story. It simply asked, the world is getting better or worse? On Instagram, the results were 84% saying the world is getting worse and 16% saying it was getting better. In the Facebook group, 89% said the world is getting worse and 11% said the world is getting better. I was surprised at the results. Of course, in retrospect, I shouldn't have been surprised because people always seem to love being negative one way or the other. And immediately I had that moment where I thought, am I crazy? Are people living in some different world, or am I just really clueless about the direction the world has been going in for a long time? I answered that the world is getting better. It felt like a no-brainer to me, but after seeing the poll results, I had to question myself. So I started to dig in and do some research to find out what the actual truth is. And I did find out what the truth is. I'm going to go over what I found. And for those of you who love the Satanic Temple and claim to adhere to their 7 tenets, tenet number 5 is the one that is most relevant here. I know that some of you still care about those tenets. That tenet states, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. Keep that in mind as we go. In order to measure something like a trend going in the direction of better or worse, you need some kind of actual metrics to judge by. We can't do what TST's tenet warns against and I agree with, which is allowing a feeling or belief to distort your view of reality. So I wanted to focus on a few obvious metrics that would help give some clarity to ideas like better and worse, which on their own are just subjective feelings. The 5 areas I chose to focus on are life expectancy, safety, freedom, poverty, and education. Now, I can already hear some folks out there, what the fuck? He didn't mention this thing or this other thing. And yeah, I can't mention every last issue in the world. I settled on the 5 big universal issues that apply to pretty much all people all over the world at any given time. If you think you have a metric that should be used that is more important than any of the ones I've mentioned, I'd love to hear it. Send me an email and let me know. Aside from these specific measurable things, we have to be really careful to not be short-sighted. It's really easy to base your feelings about this stuff on a really small window of time. You could have a bad week or a few weeks and say, see, last week was pretty good, but this week was really shitty, so obviously the world is getting worse. If we want to see the actual direction that things are trending over time, we have to zoom out a bit and use historical facts and data in order to remove that bias. If you're a naturally cynical or negative or depressed person, you might just feel that the world is getting worse no matter what. So we use facts and data to avoid that and get to the truth. I will touch on all 5 of those areas that I mentioned, but first let me just give you a little overall spoiler. Using uncontroversial data taken from official and scientific sources such as the United Nations, World Health Organization, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and World Bank, we know that by most measures, the world is improving at an accelerated pace. It's not even close or debatable. Globally, incomes are growing, and prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, the median U.S. income was at an all-time high. Absolute poverty is declining. We live longer lives, with more mothers surviving pregnancy and more babies living into adulthood. Humanity has access to more food and education, cleaner water, and safer sanitation. We fight fewer wars, and the wars that we do fight are shorter and cost fewer lives. The male-female gap in education and income is rapidly closing. Other trends include the rise in global happiness, decline in global income inequality, a rise in IQ scores, decriminalization of same-sex relationships, continued rise in vaccinations against contagious diseases, falling cancer death rates, decline in the use of capital punishment, falling rates of military spending, the shrinkage of nuclear arsenals, a decline in working hours, falling rates of child labor and workplace accidents, ever-increasing access to electricity and internet-driven access to information. So I guess we can end the episode right there, right? That's really most of what you need to know. But all right, we can go a little deeper if you'd like. Let's start with life expectancy. I'm using what is referred to as life expectancy at birth, and this is the most commonly used measure. We'll look at some historical data. Demographic research suggests that at the beginning of the 19th century, no country in the world had a life expectancy longer than 40 years. Almost everyone in the world lived in extreme poverty. We had very little medical knowledge, and in all countries, our ancestors had to prepare for an early death. The United Nations estimate a global average life expectancy of 73.4 years. Globally, the life expectancy increased from less than 30 years to over 73 years. After 2 centuries of progress, we can expect to live more than twice as long as our ancestors. Just to illustrate some examples, here are some stats on life expectancy at birth in some large countries between the year 1960 and 2019. That's where this data is from. The United States, in 1960, it was age 70. In 2019, 79. In Saudi Arabia, in 1960, the age was 46. In 2019, it is 77. That's a hell of a jump. In India, in 1960, it was 45. In 2019, 71. In China, in 1960, the age was 50. In 2019, it was up to 78. So, obviously, we've taken huge leaps in life expectancy, and that comes along with countless other improvements to our general health. So, mark this one in the better column for sure. Now, let's talk about safety. The category here is referred to as death from injury, which includes accidents, violence, and suicide. We're measuring the number of deaths from injury per 100,000 people, okay? In 1990, globally, there were 84.7 deaths from injury per 100,000 people. It has steadily declined, and by 2019, it had dropped all the way from 84.7 to 54.7. And we can be more specific. How about homicides in the United States? In 1990, there were about 10 homicides per 100,000 people. In 2019, it was down to 5.4 homicides per 100,000 people. That's a pretty significant drop. For comparison, in the UK, it is 0.5 homicides per 100,000 people. How about motor vehicle safety specifically? We have stats on motor vehicle crash deaths per 100,000 people. This includes passenger vehicle occupants, pedestrians, motorcyclists, bicyclists, and large truck occupants. In 1975, there were 20.6 motor vehicle crash deaths per 100,000 people. In 2021, we find ourselves down to 12.9 motor vehicle crash deaths per 100,000 people. That represents a drop of over 37%, and that is a very significant improvement. Now, I don't have stats on these things, but just use your imagination when comparing today to any time before the 2000s, let's say. Imagine you're in trouble, you're scared, or you've been attacked, or you've witnessed an accident or a crime. How quickly can you reach the authorities or medical assistance? Nowadays, no matter where you are, it takes about 3 seconds because you already have a mobile phone in your pocket if it's not in your hand already. Back just a short while ago, you certainly did not. That phone also has a camera in it. I don't think I need to bother explaining the many ways that such a camera works to keep people safe, not to mention how it works to bring accountability and justice in so many cases. That's a huge safety improvement. And while we're talking about phones, my son carries one. Not only am I able to track his location very accurately with it while he's out and about, but I'm able to call him at any time, and he's able to call me if he needs help with anything. This is a great tool for safety that previous generations never had access to. We've got doorbell cameras, security systems, condoms, seatbelts, helmets, crosswalks, stop signs, filtered water. How about this one, guys? How about science? How about things like vaccines? Remember the bubonic plague? You guys remember smallpox? I find it hard to believe that any reasonable person would say that the world is less safe nowadays. We'll put this one in the better column as well. This next one is tricky, but let's take a look at freedom. There is an organization called Freedom House. You can go learn about them if you want to. Among other things, they create Freedom in the World, which is an annual global report on political rights and civil liberties. It is composed of numerical ratings and descriptive texts for each country and a select group of territories. The 2023 edition of Freedom in the World is the 50th in this series of annual reports. So they've been working on this for quite a long time. Every country gets a rating of free, partly free, or not free status. The combination of the overall score awarded for political rights and the overall score for civil liberties, after being equally weighted, determines the status of free, partly free, or not free. I can't go too deep into this one on the show because it is a wild mountain of information, but we can see a simple comparison over time. When Freedom House issued the first edition of its global survey back in 1973, 44 of 148 countries were rated free. As of 2023, 84 of 195 countries are rated free. Freedom House says, over the past 50 years, consolidated democracies have not only emerged from deeply repressive environments, but also proven to be remarkably resilient in the face of new challenges. Although democratization has slowed and encountered setbacks, ordinary people around the world, including in Iran, China, and Cuba, continue to defend their rights against authoritarian encroachment. And let's take a casual look at just the United States. You know what we used to have? Slavery. We don't have that anymore. That's better. For a long time, both Black Americans and women were not allowed to vote. And quite a while back, we completely eliminated voter discrimination based on race and sex. That's better. Did you know that gay marriage used to be illegal? Nowadays, it's legal. That's better. And let's look at what I guess we could call financial freedom. Some of the amazing technological advances that we touched on earlier have also provided all of us with countless new ways to find financial independence, or at least provide additional streams of income. We now have services like OnlyFans, Patreon, Substack, Medium, TikTok, Vimeo, Rumble, X, YouTube, and countless others. Entrepreneurship has become almost completely democratized. Even things like the stock market. Every regular person with a mobile phone can download an app and participate. Musicians, artists, authors, and filmmakers are now able to create whatever they can dream up and share it with a worldwide audience. I think it's safe to say that all of this is better. So let's move on and discuss poverty. The stat we're looking at first is the global poverty rate. According to the World Bank, the global extreme poverty rate declined from over 90% in 1820 to less than 10% by 2015. That is clearly a tremendous improvement. That is a measure of what we call extreme poverty. But there are levels, right? And along with those levels comes more mountains of data measuring and comparing all of those levels in so many countries around the world. We obviously can't go into the details of all of it, but the one thing that it all has in common is that it is improving, and it has been for quite a while. Over time, fewer people are living in poverty. Do most of us wish it was 0%? Yeah. It would be really nice if not a single person was living in poverty. It would be really great if not a single thing in the whole world was less than perfect. But that isn't reality. The reality is that tons of really important things are improving all the time. So let's acknowledge and appreciate that for the indisputable fact that it is. And that's really all there is to say about poverty. The last one on the list is education. There's plenty to look at here, but we'll stick to the big picture. First, let's take a look at the literate world population. In 1820, just over 12% of the world population was literate. As of 2020, about 87% of the world population is literate. That's an incredible improvement, right? In 1998, 382 million children were not enrolled in primary or secondary school. As of 2019, despite an overall increase in the child population, that number dropped down to 257 million children who were not enrolled. This is another improvement. So, literacy is up and more kids are in school. This is all better, right? We've looked at life expectancy, safety, freedom, poverty, and education. Again, please tell me if I'm missing any real big, important categories that would nullify all of the positive progress being made in those areas. When I was discussing some of the reasons that people have for saying the world is getting worse, the two that seemed to repeat or stand out were racism/anti-Semitism and climate change. I don't know what to say about those topics, really. Is there racism in the world? Yes. Is climate change a thing? Yes. I don't think the existence of those things means that the world is getting worse. Those things have always existed, and they probably always will. So, Joseph, you're saying everything is just fine and dandy? No. Where there's people, there will be problems. And on Earth, we've got no shortage of people. Just like all of the people who worked toward making the tremendous progress I've already talked about today, we need to keep doing that. And I'm extremely confident that we will. There's no evidence leading me to believe that it will stop. I often make a comparison to the stock market. If you look at a graph of the stock market overall on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis, you see that graph having wild fluctuations up and down, sometimes making pretty dramatic moves. But if you zoom out farther, you will clearly see that even with all of those wild fluctuations, the overall trend is always up. The facts and knowledge is the easy part. The real question is, why do so many people in general, and in our case, Satanists specifically, have this false perception that the world is getting worse when the opposite is actually true? While this discussion was happening in Satanic Delco, a member of ours, Josh, posted this message. Another aspect of our current culture is the increasing ability to embrace isolationism that is leading to the negativity and catastrophizing events beyond their actual impact. The media we consume, becoming ever increasingly more catered to our preferences, is leading to a decrease in consumption and observation of media with counter viewpoints. This leads to the increase in isolationism and allows communities to form where people don't have to interact or process offensive, counter, or new ideas. Although it may be difficult, it is important to hold accountable media and people who have differing ideas while also being open to accountability from opposition. Thank you, Josh. I think Josh may be onto something there. And why is this issue important to me? It's important to me because I have to live with you all. I have to move around the world interacting with people online and in person. And look, I'm naturally a cynical person. I deal with lots of the same shit that everyone else deals with. Once in a while, I have a girl problem. Sometimes I have money problems. I hate my own face and body. My beautiful little dog, Walter, just passed away recently, and that was a huge fucking bummer. And I have a permanently broken heart because every single day I'm reminded that my son's life will always be much harder than I wish it were, and I'm unable to fix that for him. And then I see the news, and I get more bummed out. But because I have to actually wake up again tomorrow and live life again, I don't want it to be nothing but a walking negative bitch fest. I fight back against negativity as best I can. I fight back with magic. I pursue joy. I try to get enough little moments to make it all worth it. I focus on creative projects and skydiving and whatever other things make me feel good. I always call it sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but of course it's more than that. And it can be anything. The good news is, on one hand, it doesn't matter if you think the world is getting better or worse. It is objectively getting better. And you get to reap the benefits of that even while you're over there being a negative Nancy, using your advanced modern technology to find counterpoints to illustrate how terrible everything is. But on the other hand, for your own sake, it would be healthier for you to adjust your perspective a bit. Rather than live your Debbie Downer life with this doom and gloom view of the world, allow yourself to find balance. Enjoy the truly amazing world that you live in as best you can, while also doing what you can to be responsible and helpful toward making it even better for the future. But it's going to keep on getting better with or without you. So if you've got a moment out there, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. I'd like you to stay safe out there, and hail Satan.
Ибо вы